substitute for victory.
Let us never negotiate out of fear.
We stand undivided, forever united, fighting hand in hand for the liberty we've earned, for glory and honor, for our sons and daughters, ever mindful of the lessons we've learned. Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome to the intersection of faith and politics. This is WallBuilders Live with David Barton and Rick Green. We sure appreciate you joining us today. I'm Rick Green, and we're going to be going to David Barton in just a moment in a presentation that he gave at the ProFamily Legislators Conference just a few weeks ago. If you'd like to find out more about that Legislators Conference, be sure and visit our website, WallBuilders.com, and then click on the link for the ProFamily Legislators Conference. You can share that with legislators in your area, in your state, and get them to go and attend the conference. They're going to get to hear from some great speakers. They're going to get to sharpen each other's countenance, get great legislative ideas, and just learn how to move the constitutional conservative movement forward. What we're going to do today is pick up on part 3 from a presentation that David Barton gave at that conference on Common Core, which means yesterday was the middle part and the day before was the beginning. So if you're just tuning in and you missed those, just go to our website at wallbuilderslive.com. and you'll be able to get yesterday and the day before. And today, you can get all 3 parts, and you can share them with your friends and family. Let's pick up right where we left off yesterday. Here's David Barton at the ProFamily Legislators Conference speaking on Common Core.
13 years old, you're supposed to be performing as an adult. So the concept of adolescence does not appear. Now, we have certainly made that the center of our educational philosophy today, is we want to prolong adolescence. By the way, as Rabbi Lapin points out, the official age of adolescence in America today is now 30 years old. You're an adolescent up to 30 years old. We act immature up to 30 years old. Why not? You know, that's so going back to this concept of adolescence, you look at what we did, the expectations we had. We didn't expect you to be an adolescent. We had high expectations. The first textbook ever published in America was the New England Primer. Now, we had textbooks in America before that, but they were not published here. This was published in Boston in 1690 by Benjamin Harris. And it's interesting that it takes you through phonics. It shows you the letters of the alphabet, how to put the letters together to make syllables, syllables make words. And again, that's one of the debates we're having again, is should we use phonics now? Let's go to whole language. Well, we tried that and it didn't work. Even California abandoned whole language. And so we're back into this phonics debate. We used phonics for centuries. And so as you go through and look in this first textbook, you have sections where you memorize like this. A, in Adam's fall, we sinned all. B, heaven defined, the Bible mind. C, Christ crucified for sinners died. It's all Bible phrase there, and you see the pictures are there. The picture with H is pretty interesting. My book and heart must never part. See the picture there? Psalms 119, thy word have I hid in my heart, might not sin against. This is what we had kids being raised with. And generally, this was what they were learning at 3 and 4 years old. This is the book they were using at the age of 3 and 4. I actually have catechisms for children in the library. If you remind me, we'll pull it out on Sunday, those that want to see it. Catechism for children 3 years old, catechism for children 4 years old, 5 years old, right on through. So we started really early. We had high expectations. We memorized this section, A wise son makes a glad father, the foolish son, so heaven is his mother, right on through, all the letters of the alphabet, they're all got a Bible verse. We had 168 questions in the end for these 3 and 4 year olds. Here's one of the questions. Question 36, what are the benefits within this life to accompany or flow from justification, adoption, and sanctification? That's a 3 and 4 year old question in early America. That's what we're covering early America. And we did this to 1930. We have this textbook in schools till 1930, from 1690 to 1930. So we had high expectations for our kids. We have that book reprinted if you're interested in it. So high expectations. Now, we get to the point where we had changes, and we moved away from all 3 of these areas. For example, religion, morality, knowledge, we're not going to do that anymore. And particularly on June the 25th of 1962 in Engel versus Vitale, followed within 12 months by 2 more decisions, Abney Ship and Murray Corlett, the court said, you know, this deal of voluntary Bible, voluntary prayer, we're not going to do any of that anymore. And so that goes out the door. Religion, morality, knowledge, kid don't even say God at graduation. No way. So we've gone so far in being exactly opposite. There's also the aspect of thinking. We didn't want you thinking anymore. And so what we did, we changed the focus. And it changed really with the progressive education movement that happened. And so many leaders in the progressive education movement, you had Ingersoll You had folks like Parker, you had folks like Lester Ward, you had folks like Kilpatrick, and of course you had folks like John Dewey, all leaders in progressive education. And their belief was that what you want to do with kids is you want to move them out of thinking and you want to take them into learning. Learning is more important than thinking. The difference with that is it changes the focus from the student and places all the emphasis on the teacher. Instead of thinking, I'm going to learn what my teacher tells me. And so as a result, we even changed the way we did testing. If you look at testing and up until that point in time, you did not go to school after the 8th grade. 8th grade, you're done with your education. If you want to have a lot of fun, most of you in your states, go back in the 1920s and find your 8th grade exit exam in your states and look at it and get thoroughly embarrassed because it's postdoctoral level stuff today. It's what an average 8th grader knew back then. But the progressive education movement said, no, compulsory education, 12 years. We need to indoctrinate you thoroughly in 12 years. And so what they did was they took the focus off the student and put it on the teacher. And since the teacher is now the source of knowledge, that's a small end of the funnel. Students learn what the teachers tell them, and they spit it back. That's why you saw in that era, that's where we started doing for the first time, we started doing fill-in-the-blank test, and we started doing true and false and multiple choice. Here, you got these choices. What did the teacher tell you? It's not you're feeding yourself anymore. You got to have somebody else feed you. And so the emphasis totally changed in that period of time with progressive education.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court recently overturned the jury sentence of a man convicted of the brutal murder of a 71-year-old woman because the prosecuting attorney had mentioned a Bible verse in the courtroom. Yet consider what happened in the 1778 case, Respublica versus John Roberts. Thomas McKean, a signer of the Declaration of Independence, was the Chief Justice of that court, and addressing John Roberts after the jury had sentenced him to death for treason, McKean told him, "You will probably have but a short time to live. Before you launch into eternity, it behooves you to repent of your evil deeds, to be incessant in prayers to the great and merciful God to forgive your manifold transgressions and sins, to teach you to rely upon the merit and passion of a dear Redeemer." This prominent founding father actually delivered a salvation message to the defendant in the courtroom.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8-REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
We moved away from thinking. That goes out the door. We're just going to be a learner. When you are only a learner and not a thinker, that's when you become very gullible. That's when indoctrination is really easy to occur because you don't think through what the other side says. You don't think through the weaknesses. You just take whatever they give you and then you spit it back out on the test. Really, and that's why the media's had much more influence now than it has in previous generations. We've always had bad media. The American patriots complained about the British sympathetic media and the bias of the media. It just didn't affect anybody back then because we could think back then. It affects a lot of people now because we don't think. If you're familiar with stats, you know that 50% of all votes cast in a presidential election are cast on the basis of 30-second TV commercials. That's not thinking. That's just taking whatever somebody tells me. So that's the problem we had with that. The results of the change were fairly visible. I'll run through these really quickly. We removed religion, morality, and knowledge. Dr. Benjamin Rush, signer of the Declaration. John Adams said he's one of the three most notable signers. He's called the father of public schools under the Constitution. This is what he wrote. He says, "Without religion, I believe learning does real mischief to the morals and principles of mankind." Now remember, the purpose of education was to teach you religion, morality, and knowledge. Without religion, morals are damaged. So we're not, if we take religion out, then you got real problem with morals. He's exactly right. You look, I was a consultant in U.S. Justice Department, so we deal with the cabinet level departments. You get all these stats, and it's pretty easy to see what happened to morals. Remember 62, 63, we say no more religion, morality, or knowledge. And at that point in time, you look what happened to morals. This is 15-year-old girls. This is the birth rate, teenage pregnancy rate that went through the 700% increase after that point. Go back for decades, flat and stable, 700% increase. We lost our morals because we took religion out. Same way with junior high students. This is 10 through 14-year-old junior high students. sexually transmitted diseases. Look what happened sexually through the roof. We had 6 sexually transmitted diseases back then. We have 27 today, and 4 of which are permanent diseases. We have no cure for 4 of those 27 STDs. So morality, we lost it. Benjamin Rush also said that if we ever took, and this is the piece he did it, if you ever took the Bible out of schools, he said, we'll spend all of our time and money fighting crime when we could have prevented crime right there in the classroom. They knew that if you couldn't control the inside, you couldn't control the outside. So he warned that a generation takes the Bible out, you spend all of your time and money fighting crime. Well, he's right. Here's Justice Department statistics, violent crime, 62, 63, we take it out, 694% increase in violent crime since that point in time. Imagine how much lower the crime would be if people controlled themselves on the inside, but we don't want them doing that. That's religion, morality, and knowledge. You also have the statement he made, I believe there's the most knowledge in those countries or the most Christianity. The SAT test, prior to the time that David Coleman got a hold of it, you look at what happened to SAT scores, and here's where the scores had been for all those years, and here's what happened after we took religion out of education. We lost knowledge. Now, it is striking that you see how it bellies out right in there? You say, no, wait a minute. If the premise is you take God out, it ought to still be going down. Well, according to the SAT testing before they renormed the test, it still was going down. But you had a growing number of students who were being homeschooled or were being in private schools. In other words, a God-centered type of it. 95% of private schools are Christian schools. And the average Christian school homeschool score was 100 points higher than the average public school score, which put their scores right back up where it had been prior to 62, 63. So 12% of the students still up here, 88% going down here is what causes it to belly out. Doesn't cause it to rise up, but it's enough to slow down the decline and stop. So that's the reason we had that change. And by the way, there are 6 nationally normed tests that are used, the California Achievement Test, Iowa Test of Basic Skills, Stanford Achievement Test. They're academic tests. And you find that for Christian schools, kids that go through Christian schools, by the time they get to 9th grade, and this is homeschools as well, time they get to 9th grade, they have pegged out the academic knowledge test. Now, when you get to 12th grade, public schools still haven't pegged it out. We don't know how high Christian school or Christian knowledge goes, but we know they pegged it out in 9th grade. This would make perfect sense if these tests ask questions like, name the books of the Bible. That's not a fair question for 80% of the kids not in Christian school. If it said, what does John 3:16 say? That's not fair. That's not what the test is. The test says, solve the following algebraic equation. That's an academic question. The test says, what year does the Civil War take place? And to the best of my knowledge, the Civil War takes place in a Christian school the same time it takes place in a public school, but you're getting 2 to 4 grade levels knowledge higher. See, this is all, Mike's got all sorts of tests on homeschools, the superior academic knowledge, the better demographics, the better everything that's out there. So that's what we believe about education. Now, when we took God out and went to a secular education model, we had been number 1 in the world in literacy. We fell to number 65 in the world in literacy. Number 60, as I mentioned, 19% of our students that graduate today cannot read their own diploma. So we fell to 65. We have about 700,000 students a year that graduate that cannot read their own diploma. And that's a lot of money we spend for kids that can't read anything at all. We have, in the last 2 decades, we've come in dead last in the world 17 out of 19 years in math and science testing. Now, there was an international test recently where we did a lot better. Elementary students, they finally did above average compared to other nations, Romania and Wales and Bulgaria and what we think are third world nations. Our elementary kids were above average. Now, our junior high kids were at average, and our high school kids were below average. By the way, think about that for a minute. If you've had a few years in American education, you're above average. A few more years, you are average, and a few more years, you're below average. That's not a good trend. That's why the American School Board Journal, and there's 16,000 school boards in the United States, a secular group, look what they said. They said the longer U.S. students stay in school, the less they seem to know. Yeah, that's international testing.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. Around 1790, the infamous Thomas Paine wrote his Age of Reason, attacking religion and Christianity. Interestingly, one of the strongest defenders against Paine's attack was Benjamin Franklin. In fact, he stiffly rebuked Paine and told him, "He that spits in the wind spits in his own face." Do you imagine any good would be done by this attack against religion? Think how great a portion of mankind consists of youth who have need of the motives of religion to restrain them from vice, to support their virtue. I would advise you not to attempt unchaining the tiger, but to burn this piece before it is seen by any other person. If men are so wicked with religion, what would they be if without it? Benjamin Franklin believed that the practice of religion was one of the greatest assets of American society.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8-REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
See, as long as we compare ourselves to ourselves, we look really smart when we use an objective standard out there. And that's why Common Core is not changing anything. It's making it worse because we're getting less academic knowledge. So, having said that, now, let me finish it out by high expectations. What did we used to have when we taught in schools things like religion, morality, and knowledge, when we actually trained students to think and we had high expectations? Let me take you through some quick examples. You have founding fathers like Fisher Ames, framer of the Bill of Rights. He is the guy who actually gave us the House version of the First Amendment. You know, we're told that means separation of church and state. He gave us that. It doesn't say that. It does guarantee free exercise of religion. It's interesting that this man right here, founding father, when he was 12 years old, was admitted to Harvard University. Now, it sounds a little impressive until you hear the rest of the story. You could not get into any university back then, Harvard or Yale or Dartmouth or Dickinson or William and Mary or Princeton, unless you could prove that you were trilingual. You had to be fluent in Latin and Greek and English. In Latin, you read all the classics. You read Homer, you read Cicero, you read Plutarch. English, obvious. Greek, why? Because your freshman project at every university in America was you made a handwritten translation of the Greek New Testament in English, or at least the book of John in English. He's doing that at 12 years old. Now I'm impressed. Trilingual, translating the Greek New Testament in English. Don't be impressed, because the average age at which an American went to college back then was 13 years old. So he's only a little bit better than his peers. Average was 13. Now, you do have Benjamin Rush. I mentioned him. He is the top doctor in American history. He's called the father of American medicine. When he was 14 years old, he graduated from Princeton University. Now, I don't know how comfortable you are going to a 14-year-old doctor, but the best doctor in American history graduates from Princeton when he's 14. And then you have folks like John Trumbull, who's a justice in the Supreme Court of Connecticut. He's also a literary figure. If you're in advanced placement literature, you used to read some of his literary works. When he was 4 years old, he had finished reading through the King James Bible for the first time from cover to cover at the age of 4. By the way, John Witherspoon, signer of the Declaration, had done the same. As I pointed out, when they were 3 years old, we had them in these pretty elegant catechisms going through, the New England Primer, 3- and 4-year-old. So that's founding fathers like John Trumbull, James Iredell, appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court by George Washington. He was a ratifier of the Constitution. When he was 17 years old, he was the chief financial officer in his state, in his region in North Carolina. He's in charge of the finances in that region in North. 17-year-old in charge of the finances? Not today. See, but we had high expectations back then. This one is a little point of personal privilege. I mentioned I'm a cowboy. You saw some pictures last night. I love the Pony Express story. If you've seen the Pony Express poster, it says St. Joe, Missouri to California in 10 days or less. Now, that piece of turf right there, going from St. Joe, Missouri over here to California, that's 1,800 miles in 10 days. Now, when Tim Brooks and I go riding, if we put 25 miles on a horse in a day, the horse is worn out and we're worn out. This is 180 miles a day that they were making on horseback for 10 straight days. That is amazing coverage. Now, look at the rest of the poster. St. Joe, Missouri to California in 10 days or less. Wanted, young, skinny, wiry fellows, not over 18, must be expert riders, willing to risk death daily, orphans preferred, $25 a week. Now, but notice, not over 18. Riding 180 miles a day for 10 days, and you got to fight off the outlaws and the storms and all the wait a minute. Yeah, and one of the most famous Pony Express riders was Bronco Charlie, who, by the way, was 11 years old as a Pony Express rider. But that's not unusual, because he was a professional bronc buster when he was 8 years old. What happened to our expectations? See, our expectations, they say, kids, If you graduate from high school and go to college for 4 years, and then if you get out and get a job, maybe by the time you're 25, 26 years old, you can start being productive. And here's what we want from you. Kid, if you will get a job where you can pay taxes, and if you will not kill someone and get yourself thrown in jail, you will be a model citizen. That's what we expect of all of our citizens. That's how high our expectations are for kids. Maybe when you're 25 you can be productive. No, look what we had back then. A couple more examples. John Clem. John Clem was part of the Battle of Chickamauga in the Civil War. In that battle, he showed bravery on the battlefield, and as a result, he was promoted Battlefield Commission. It's reported in his hometown newspaper in Indiana. Indiana Register of 1864 says this. It says, John, Little John was his nickname, Clem, in the Army of the Cumberland, promoted for bravery by General Rosecrans to sergeancy, has been further promoted by General Thomas to lieutenancy and placed on his staff. So what he did there on the battlefield, he gets made from a private to a sergeant, and that's by General Rosecrans, but then General Thomas comes along and says, no, I need you on my staff. The general said, you're going to be a lieutenant on my staff. That's pretty fast promotion. By the way, he is but 12 years old. And here is his picture. There is Sergeant John Clem. Hero of the Battle of Wait a minute. He's lieutenant? General Thomas took him from being a sergeant, made him a lieutenant at 12 years old? See, that's what we expected back then. We wouldn't dare put that out today because we might make kids feel bad about themselves. No, we've so goofed up the system, we don't have high expectations anymore. And by the way, if you think I'm just picking the exception, not the rule, let me take you to textbooks like this one. This is Webster's Blueback Speller. This was the book from which we learned to spell for 150 years, 1782 until 1932. And notice on it says elementary spelling. I want you to see the elementary words that we had here. These are all now, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce many of these words because I don't have a clue what they mean. But I do know that for 150 years, this was the beginning spelling in America. This is the stuff that I'm not talking about the brightest kids. I'm talking about every kid. Every light bulb in the box got these words right here. So that's what we had in spelling. If you're into geography, you may enjoy this test. This is a test out of Chicago. See Chicago, March 27, 1862. It's a 4th grade test. You get 35 minutes for the test. Here's your questions. These are 4th grade questions for all the public school kids. How many degrees of longitude are there? How many degrees wide are the temperate zones? Name the principal animals of the frigid zone. What portion of the people in the globe are pagans? What portion Christians? I mean, that's 4th grade stuff in Chicago public schools.
Hey, this is Tim Barton with WallBuilders. And as you've had the opportunity to listen to WallBuilders Live, you've probably heard the wealth of information about our nation, about our spiritual heritage, about the religious liberties, about all the things that makes America exceptional. And you might be thinking, as incredible as this information is, I wish there was a way that I could get one of the WallBuilders guys to come to my area and share with my group, whether it be a church, whether it be a Christian school or public school or some political event or activity. If you're interested in having a WallBuilder speaker come to your area, you can get on our website at www.wallbuilders.com, and there's a tab for scheduling. And if you'll click on that tab, you'll notice there's a list of information from speakers' bios to events that are already going on, and there's a section where you can request an event to bring this information about who we are, where we came from, our religious liberties and freedoms. Go to the WallBuilders website and bring a speaker to your area.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
If you're into math, which I was a math and science teacher for years. I was a principal of school. I'm into math. That's what I taught. This is 6th grade and 7th grade math textbooks I'm going to show you here. So this is what we had for 6th and 7th graders in 1862. Here's one of your math questions. I insured 2/3 of a shop worth $3,600 and 4/5 of a house worth $6,000, paying $126. What was the rate of insurance? That's a 6th and 7th grade math question. Every kid, see this part, this is what you had to learn before you got your exit exams out of 8th grade. Here's another math question. How many $50 shares at 8% discount must be given for 23 bonds, $100 each at 2% premium? That's a 6th and 7th grade math question. And we also taught what was called mental math, where you're not allowed to use pen and paper. You have to do it in your mind. And so mental math, here's some 1877 textbooks. Again, this is 6th and 7th grade. Solve all these questions in your mind. Again, this is easy stuff. We're all adults here. We've already been out of junior high for a long time. Easy questions. Mental math. A boat worth $864, of which 1/8 belonged to A, 1/4 to B, and the rest to C, was lost. What loss did he sustain it having been insured for $500? Solve that in your mind. That's a 6th and 7th grade mental math problem. One more mental math problem. If 6 men can do a piece of work in 5 days, in what time can they do it if they receive the assistance of 3 additional men when the work is half completed? That is American education. Tell me Common Core is anywhere close to that. You want rigorous education? Go backwards. Don't go forward. Go backwards. This is the stuff that worked. So we're talking about lipstick on a pig when we talk about Common Core, because we've got such a fundamentally flawed system. We can play around the fringes all we want to, but until we have some pretty dramatic restructuring of what we do with content, we're just not going to get back in the same direction. So that's some Common Core stuff. We'll have a panel on this tomorrow where a lot of folks in their states have been able to answer a lot of things that you hear, objections raised. We'll cover some of that tomorrow.
Well, friends, that is the conclusion of David Barton's presentation on Common Core that he gave at the ProFamily Legislators Conference a few weeks ago. Hope that you enjoyed it. Hope you learned a lot. And you got some good action steps, and would encourage you to share it with your friends and family and your state legislator. You can do that by going to WallBuildersLive.com. Get all 3 programs, today, yesterday, and the day before. And that's the entire presentation, and you can share it right there through email or on Facebook. We sure appreciate you listening today. You've been listening to David Barton and a presentation on Common Core that he gave at the ProFamily Legislators Conference, brought to you by WallBuilders Live.
We stand undivided forever.